Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Tirson. I'm a creative director based in New York City. We finally made it to part 4. It sounds like a lot of you are really enjoying this series, so let's recap real quick. In part 1, I went over scouting a location, booking a crew, and budgets. In part 2, we went over putting together a pre-pro doc. In part 3, I covered what to do on set. If you missed any of those, I'm linking everything in the description below. In this video, I will cover post-production, which is editing down your film, marking up your images for retouching, and sizing for different crops. There's also a reference guide for you to download in the description below. You're done with the shoot. You may have made some selects on set, but now you have to look at all the images in greater detail. The photographer or their agent may follow up with a link. It's important that you establish when you need the images by so you can meet your deadlines. Photographers send links in a few different ways and also a mixture of sorts. Some send the entire film, which I do not prefer. I would say the greater majority will send you a tighter edit with some options. This is my preference because it gives them the opportunity to have a say in the selects. When you get the film from the photographer, make sure to check the files. Sometimes they'll send you medium res JPEGs and then you have to request the high res. The preference is always to have high res TIFFs because there's more information in the photographs and it makes it easier for retouching. Let's edit some film. Here I have some photos from a shoot I did for Travel and Leisure with Andrew Southam. What's happening here is that the photographer was taking shots in live time, so I didn't want to interrupt the flow. This is what he sent as his tighter edit. Let's look at each shot and make some decisions. This first option is great. The hand feels natural. I would say if the hand with salt was a tad higher, I wouldn't feel as strongly about the shot, but it's nice, so I'll mark this as a select. The next shot, I think the drip from the spoon is too long here. I'm saying no for this one. This was mid-motion, but I don't think the squeeze is far enough into the motion, so no to this one as well. Here we're at the end of the squeeze, so it works better for me. There's not too much going on here. I like that the first shots captured more of a moment, so no to this one and no to this one. Okay, a different angle of another squeeze, but this works too. So we have 3 selects from this set. These are all great and I know they'll work for what I need. There's no rule for how many selects you need to decide on. Sometimes there's 10, sometimes there's 1. Here's a shoot I did for Porsche. Similar to the last set, this was done in live time. He only sent 1 select of the back of the car, but I also looked at the outtakes and I agreed with him on this. Very similar shots here. I think the color feels better on the shots pulled back. The light flare is a nice element, so I'll mark the other one no. What I also like about the other photos is that there's some dust in the back, which suggests the speed of the car. I want the car slightly bigger in the crop, so I'm going with this one. This image works as well. There's a color shift here because the sun was coming down fast. I like it as an option if I needed the color on the page. I love these shots a lot, but I'm not actually sure where I would use them because they're more atmospheric. Of them, I would choose the first 2 as options and I can play around with the crop. I have so much film from the shoot, so we could do this all day, but you get the idea. You may also disagree with the options that I chose, so choose photos to your liking and work for what you need. Retouching is definitely an area of contention in the industry. The amount of retouching is dependent on the art director. I try my best to reduce the amount of retouching as possible, but it is still inevitable. Your job is to produce the best photo possible, so be purposeful with the retouching and don't just retouch things for the sake of doing it. With that said, let's mark up your images for a retoucher. It's going to look a little crazy, but stay with me. Let's use this image. First, I provide the image name so the retoucher doesn't get confused if there are similar images. I don't love that the sign is coming out from the top of the car, so I'm going to remove it. The retouching note for removing something is this loop line. The car is looking gray, but it's actually white, so we need to turn it white. In this bottom area, you can't see any of the exhaust, so I want to open up the shadows. If you were going to print this image as it is, the color would bleed and it'll print black. I also want to open up the shadows on the wheels as well. Logos are important if a client is involved, so we want to brighten and make the logo pop on the back. Lastly, this top area is pretty blown out. I want to bring back the sky, but since a larger majority of the photos are this yellow colorway, I want to shift the color towards yellow. My note here says, bring back atmosphere. It was shot during sundown, so please shift towards yellow. I'm also providing reference photos and their file names. And that's it. Do this for all the images you need retouched. When you send it out, make sure to manage expectations on when you need the images back. If you have a tight turnaround, just ask what's possible. Oftentimes they're able to deliver, but you just never know. When you get all your images back, review them and make sure that all your notes were addressed. If some images need further retouching, then mark up the new images and send them out again. Oftentimes you'll find it's about 2 or 3 rounds until you have your final images. If you find that you're going round 4 or round 5, make sure to be more judicious during each round of retouching notes. Finally, we get to retouching. No, this is not a Photoshop tutorial on how to retouch your images, but I wanted to show the different levels of retouching post-shoot. This is an image I shot for 14 Hands Wine. As you can see, I shot to crop for Instagram stories. This image is fine and there's nothing to retouch here. Easy. Here's another image from the same shoot. We marked positioning from the previous shot, so we have to remove them. This is not something you want to send out to a retoucher. It can be done in Photoshop in less than 10 seconds. This was the image from part 3. You saw the amount of work that went into the shot, so all we have to do here is extend the background to the edges. For this image, let's clean up the crop first. The window on the right isn't reading, so we can just remove it. The image could use more color. We don't want to alter it, but enhance it, so we can simply add saturation to the pillows. Lastly, the diffuser is on, but I want to reinforce that further by making the steam above it more prominent. And here's the final image. This is the image we marked up earlier. We removed the sign above the car, then we shifted the car to white, which isn't adding white, you're just brightening the area until you get to white. The logo pops more now also, which is great. We opened up the shadows in the exhaust and wheels, and then we shifted the sky to more yellow to match the rest of the images in the set. Last one, which requires more work. The previous examples were based on the photos alone, but this is in context of a magazine cover. This is a photo of Chef Bao Bao that we shot for Ford to run as a branded cover on Food and Wine. Let's drop the masthead on here real quick. It'll be in color later, but I want to reference it for now. The first thing to do would be to straighten the image. Now, let's focus on her. We just want to do normal beauty touch-ups, fix flyaways, brighten the teeth slightly, and some smoothing in areas. I also want to subdue the wrinkles in her jacket. Let's add the masthead back. This is a branded cover, so we need to label it advertisement. The pole is obtruding the legibility, so we can remove that. The window border is forming a frame on the page, which feels dark to me. I want it there, but just for atmosphere. In theory, you could blur this, but the photo has a long depth of field. We don't want to fake it, so brightening it would be better. Let's drop the cover lines with the advertiser logo. Everything is reading fine, but this top left feels really cramped. Ideally, I want it to come down about here so it has some breathing room above. We have to increase legibility again. Instead of brightening the area, we can actually just cut down the height of the carryout containers. Last touch, I want to remove the text on the bottle of sriracha because you can't really read it anyway. We add color to the masthead, bring her head in front, and this is the final cover. On set, I don't really know where the cover lines will be, so you just have to work with the image after. Implementing the type principle of legibility influenced all the retouching decisions on the cover. You may need multiple crops on the same image, so let's just go over that real quick. The most common is for social because each platform has different requirements. For the canned wine images, I shot these to proportion for Instagram stories. I did keep in mind for the square version for Instagram posts, and here are those crops. For the staples image, I had 2 crops. For this, I would let the client decide which one they prefer. I would recommend the crop on the left, but they may say that the mouse is an important product to promote. The image of Portia for social doesn't fit a square crop nicely because we don't have any more on the top or bottom. If this happens to you, you have to do a little bit more retouching and extend the image on top and bottom so that you can scale it down to fit like this. Once you launch and export your project, make sure to gather your materials in terms of final images, video, print, whatever have you for your portfolio, but also send it to the crew that you have on set. A lot of art directors don't do this, and it breaks my heart to see creatives miss out on the final product. Your team will be extremely thankful for you, and now everyone has a complete project for their portfolios. True story, I'm really great friends with this photo agent, Elise Connolly. She is one of the original photo agents in New York City. I think she's been in business since like 1978. Anyway, we were at dinner maybe 2017, 2018. She represents Peggy Sirota, who shot this One Direction cover in Teen Vogue from 2013. Apparently, they never got the tear sheets and they never saw the final film. I have every issue of Teen Vogue that I worked on. I went home that night looking through my stash for that issue. This was the issue. I just so happened to have 2 copies of it, so I dropped one off at her apartment the day after. She was in awe because it took 5 years to finally see the tear sheets. Now, it was not my job originally to send her the tear sheets, but these tiny things matter. We work in a creative field and we're meant to share the things that we create, so this is my plea for all of you to do this too. I think that's everything. Correction, that better be everything. I'm so happy that I finally got through this series. It took so much to gather and organize the content, but I know it's something that my 23-year-old self needed, so I imagine all of you wanted this knowledge also. Make sure to download the guide, respect the process, and you'll be a pro soon enough. A kind reminder to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.